This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below.
So in about 24-ish hours, the Cleveland Browns are about to announce who they're going to cut down to their final 53. It's important to remember that the final 53 that they get down to tomorrow is not necessarily going to be the 53 that they walk into in the season with. Part of that is because they have to maneuver some things, right? If somebody has to go on IR, they have to be on the 53-man roster. Then you can place them on IR. Then you can open up a roster spot. We saw this happen with Maurice Hurst last year, where the Browns cut Maurice Hurst, but brought Maurice Hurst back. So keep that in mind when you're looking at these 53-man rosters and you're wondering, oh, who's going to make it, or if this guy's permanently off the team, if he's coming back. They feel like they have a good relationship with that player, and there's a good chance that they can bring him back without very much hassle. Then they're probably going to cut that player. It's not necessarily where that player sits as far as the depth chart goes. So that being said, let's get into the Browns 53-man prediction, my final guess on where it is. Now, the Browns have already made some cuts, right? They made 16 roster cuts so far. They cut Aiden Robbins. They cut Jacob Sailors, who was on the team for about a week. They cut guard Wyatt Davis. They cut Zach Johnson, Roy Mbeka, Chim Okorafor. And then on defense, they cut Isaiah Thomas, Jeremiah Martin, Landon Honeycutt, Caleb Johnson, Marvin Moody, Tyler Coy, Chase Williams, injury designation, and then Fallon Hicks. The biggest name of this is probably Isaiah Thomas, former 7th-round pick, somebody who got a couple of sacks in this year's preseason. They also cut the long snapper that they had, and Lucas Havershank, the kicker that they're probably going to put on the practice squad, more than likely. They like to have a kicker on the practice squad, especially since Dustin Hopkins is a little older. So that's where the Browns are shaping up. Doesn't really change much about my prediction, but some other things have happened over the course of this week that does, right? Who's on PUP, what that means for what's going to be opened up as far as roster spots. So my first position I'm going to look at, I'm going to go quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, offensive line, kind of work through the offense and work through the defense. Quarterback, obviously they're keeping Deshaun Watson. Jameis Winston, it's another lock that they're going to keep him. And I think DTR is going to make the roster. I know that they're trying to still trade DTR. I don't think they're going to find a trade partner for DTR. Now, another thing that's interesting that threw a wrench in this quarterback room situation is that the emergency quarterback was designated to come in this year as somebody who could be on the practice squad. So basically, you can activate a third quarterback from the practice squad without putting them on your 53-man roster, and that would be your third emergency quarterback. If that were the case, Tyler Huntley would be a lock for that role instead of like a DTR. But now they're saying, well, now that rule got vetoed by the NFLPA. Makes sense that they would veto that rule. They want to make it so that the only people who can play are on the active roster to protect the people on the active roster, make sure more guys make it. And a rule like that would kind of be used to make sure that you keep an extra guy on there. Anyways, especially with all the protected practice squad rules, I think that's why they wanted to do that. And again, that rule would have been an unlimited amount of times you can activate a quarterback off practice squad, which would mean you can keep a quarterback that you're planning on putting at third string, basically at a practice squad salary for the whole year. The NFLPA didn't like that. That changes the quarterback situation though, because now I do think they roster DTR. And I do think they just roll with DTR as the third quarterback instead of Tyler Huntley, who I think would have been the third quarterback in the rotation, fourth on the depth chart on the practice squad. So now I think they roll with DTR, and it's a question mark of if they bring back Tyler Huntley to the practice squad. But if they're keeping three on the roster, DTR is the third. I don't really think that they keep Tyler Huntley as the third quarter. I'd be very surprised if that were the case, to be honest with you. Going to running back, we know Nick Chubb's going to start the year on PUP. Hines is a question mark to start the year on PUP. We're not sure. He was supposed to be back at the start of camp. We're already here. He's still not back. A bit of a question mark there. So a bit of a worry about him. But that means that 2 roster spots are potentially up for grabs here. You have Jerome Ford, who's a lock to make the roster. Deontay Foreman, who I think is a pretty strong case to make the roster. Pierre Strong might make the roster here. I think the Browns will go shopping for another running back. I think it's very possible that they get a 4th guy here, maybe a Cam Akers. They're going to watch what happens with the bubble players here. And if they get a Cam Akers or somebody that they really like from somebody else's camp, I wouldn't be surprised that that led to just Nyheim Hines being disregarded completely from their plans for 2023, because this setback for his injury has really, really thrown a wrench in his ability to stay here. Wide receiver. This is a little bit difficult here, right? Because you got to find somebody who can return punts within your running back room and your wide receiver room. And if you're not keeping Nyheim Hines because he can't stay healthy, he's not on the roster right now, then this gets really, really hard to do, because Nick Chubb is not going to return punts once he's back, and he's not going to be available week 1. Jerome Ford is not a punt returner. He can do kick returns, but he's not a punt returner. Same thing with Deontay Foreman, a kick returner, but not a punt returner. You look at his wide receiver room, Amari Cooper, not returning punts. Jerry Jeudy, not returning punts. Elijah Moore, not returning punts. Cedric Tillman, not returning punts. And Jamari Thrash, I don't think he's returning punts either. I don't think that's something that he's done. Maybe this is how David Bell makes the roster over Mike Woods, is that he starts catching punts. Maybe this is David Bell's case here, or maybe this is how they keep a 6th wide receiver on the roster, is if David Bell can return punts, because I believe he's the only one on the roster that's returned it. I don't think they keep James Prochet on the roster just to have him return punts. But a factor might play in that James Prochet is one of the better blocking receivers that they have, and they might find that utility plus being able to return punts as something that they value, and they're going to roster, despite the fact that James Prochet has not had like a mind-blowing camp from a receiver standpoint. It might just be because they like him as a blocker and as a decoy guy, and as a utility guy in that wide receiver room. I think the Browns keep 2 tight ends, David Njoku and Jordan Akins. Mitchell Payton had a strong camp, but I don't think he did anything to really threaten Jordan Akins' spot. I know there's a lot of people who think that Jordan Akins should be replaced by Mitchell Payton. I think Jordan Akins has a significantly higher ceiling than him, and the Browns don't really care about how well their second tight end inline blocks, because that's mainly David Njoku or an eligible tackle's job. Offensive tackle, they're keeping Jed Wills. They're keeping DeJuan Jones. Jack Conklin is not on PUP, so that's changed from my last prediction video. And then you have James Hudson, and then maybe Jermaine Ifedi. I think that's who they'll roll with. You could swap out James Hudson and Jermaine Ifedi with anybody at the bottom of somebody's roster, and I wouldn't be upset with that. Offensive guard, I think they're going to keep Joe Bitonio. I think they're going to keep Wyatt Teller. I think they're happy enough with what Zach Zinter has done, but not so happy that they're not going to roster Michael Dunn. And I think Javion Cohen, shout out to Cole, he makes the practice squad. I think he's pushing for a roster spot, but I don't think he's going to get it. I don't think the Browns want both their backup guards being rookies. And if you move Michael Dunn to the practice squad, then that's going to be the case. Center, Luke Whippler is going to be on IR. You're going to roster him. So there's going to be somebody who gets cut. So you could put Luke Whippler on IR. Officially, I believe that's how that works. So Ethan Posick, Nick Harris, nothing surprising there. Let's move on to the defense. Edge room, nothing surprising. Nothing changes there. Miles, Zadarius, Obo, Alex Wright, Isaiah McGuire. Nothing's going to change there. Defensive tackle, Dalvin Tomlinson, no longer a candidate for PUP. So that roster spot is not open. Shelby Harris, Maurice Hurst, Michael Hall might be on the commissioner exempt list. That news did come out. So he might be suspended, which would open up his roster spot. If he is suspended, I still think the Browns stay at 5 defensive tackles instead of bringing in an extra one. And then that probably would be either Ika or Jawan Briggs. I'm not really tripping over whichever one you bring back. Ika's a 3rd-round pick, so maybe you still believe in him. I don't. Jawan Briggs has been playing better, but he's a 7th-round pick, and you might be able to keep him on the practice squad. Nah, really tripping. over all of that. So probably keeping 5 defensive tackles. I think that's what trading Chris Williams indicated when they moved him for a 6th-round pick. So I think they'll keep 5. If Maurice Hall gets put on the exempt list, then that means Ika or Juwan Briggs has a chance to make it, or maybe they go out of left field entirely with that, but I think you keep 5 overall. Let's go linebacker here. JOK, Jordan Hicks, who I hear is getting close to practicing again, or he will practice on Tuesday. So good news there. Mahmoud Diabite, Bookie Watson, Tony Fields, and Devin Bush. I wouldn't be surprised if Devin Bush is the surprise cut of this camp. A lot of people seem like to think he's going to play this year at linebacker or start in some capacity. I just have a hard time believing that, man. He's not good. He's not fast. Like, I know people are like, oh, he's got explosive speed coming out of Michigan. He was a top 10 pick. He's not anything. Like, if you took the name Devin Bush off that jersey and you threw Jacob Phillips on it, you would be like, okay, well, Jacob Phillips got worse. I would bring back Jacob Phillips before I would put Devin Bush on this main roster. But the confidence from everybody around this situation tells me that he might make the roster. If it were up to me, I wouldn't have him on there. I would cut him and then bring back like a Jacob Phillips or literally anybody else I have any familiar with. Like, I would bring back Willie Harvey instead of have Devin Bush on the roster. But that's just me. DBs, Denzel Ward. Looks like he's going to avoid being on IR, so great. Martin Emerson. Greg Newsom's back, not on PUP, so awesome to hear there. And then you have Cam Mitchell, Miles Harden, Jamie Hardy. I think that's what they stay with at DB there. I don't think there's any real movement. Maybe they move Harden to the practice squad for a year and then get somebody a little bit more experience in front of Hardy so that they don't have to, they're not an injury away from playing Miles Harden, because I don't think he's ready yet for in-game competition. So he could get moved to the practice squad. Safety, pretty much the same safety room from last year. Delpit, Thornhill, McLeod, Hickman, Bell. And then the practice squad, Khalif Elisi, maybe Tyler Huntley. Pierre Strong might be on the roster now because of injuries. Jalen Darden, I think would make sense. They want to keep an eye on him. He could potentially return punts for this team. Mike Woods, I think they would be very eager to bring him back. Javion Cohen, Javon Briggs, Mitchell Payton. I think whoever doesn't get that, like Siaki Ika, between Javon Briggs, Siaki Ika, whoever doesn't make the roster, that other guy's going to probably end up on the practice squad. And then whatever kicker they care to have to be the backup for the rest of the season. But that's going to be it for my final prediction on the 53-man roster. Let me know yours in the comment section down below, or who you think could sneak and make the roster, or who you think might be the surprise cut in the comment section below. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.